Hey everyone, welcome to the latest stream of React 2025. For those who are joining in, I apologize for the audio issues that I had previously starting this, but I got it working now. You guys can hear me. Leave a message in the chat just to make sure that I'm not not going crazy. But in today's stream, we're going to squash a few bugs, a couple that I've already squashed, and I'm going to talk through those. And then we're going to set up some integration tests. We are going to add some logging so that we can make sure that if something goes wrong, we have an audit trail for us to go back and debug the root cause. And we'll start with that and see how far we get. So with that being said, let's dive right in. The first two bugs that I started to look at were, let me switch over. Logging out should redirect back to the home page, and logging in should redirect to the dashboard. Now before, when I had a little bit of audio issues, I actually already figured these ones out. So I'm going to quickly review those changes. Inside of our auth file, previously when we were signing in to GitHub or signing into Google, we weren't doing any redirecting with Next.js's router. So what we wanted to do was, after a user successfully logs in, we wanted to then redirect them to the dashboard page. And on the inverse, when a user logs out, we wanted to make sure that they then got redirected back to the home page. So I can quickly demonstrate what this looks like. If I click log out, I'm getting redirected back to the home screen. And I might have a stale session now that I've been letting this sit here. But we'll make sure that this part is still working. Nice. Okay, so I already got those bugs squashed, which is great. The next thing that I wanted to look at was, when creating feedback, we want to use our own ID, or at least use the ID from Firebase instead of not providing anything and getting an undefined value back. So what does that look like? If I create a brand new site, and I click create, what's going to happen is the optimistic UI is going to assume that this worked, and it's not going to wait to get the ID back from Firebase when we push this into the cache and update the cache value. So new site, when it tries to build this link for the feedback, it's actually undefined, and if we go in here, it's going to blow up. So obviously we don't want that. What we want is to handle that and put in the real ID of the site. So to do that, what we're going to need to do is go into our modal where we're adding sites. And if you see right here, this is the payload that we're sending to Firebase to save off that new site. And you see nowhere in here do we provide the site ID, right? The ID of this object inside of Firebase. But then we call create site, and this goes into the database. It creates that site and it adds the data. But notice that we're not awaiting the result of this. We're just going to continue forward, show the toast like it worked, and then update our cache to include this new site. Well, I did a little bit of research into this ahead of time because I wasn't sure what the best practice is for Firebase, and there's really a couple different options for how you can handle this. You can either create your own ID on your side using any kind of ID generator you want, whether that's like a GUID or a UUID. You can also conjoin two separate keys if you're wanting to make a combination of two separate collections. Specifically for this, I wanted to just know about the Firebase ID ahead of time. I didn't necessarily need to invent my own ID structure. So what I found is that this Firestore collection sites is going to return a reference to that site. So I'm trying to remember exactly what that's called. They have a unique name for their IDs that I found out. I think it's called like a fast ID or something like that. But anyways, we can pull this out and say that the Firestore collection sites dot document, and this is going to actually create that document and give us the ID. What we want to do then is, rather than add, we want to call set and add that data. And then instead of returning that operation, we can just return the site. So now we're still not waiting for this to complete, but we're at least creating the reference to that document so that we can use the ID. So now if I go back inside here, when I do create site, I can say, okay, this is going to return the site, which is an object, and I want to destructure and pull off the ID from that response. So we can do that, get the ID back, and then inside of here, you see we're taking our new site payload. Basically what we want to do is then, instead of just putting this object, let's take this, include the ID inside of that object, and then spread out the existing properties on that object. Another thing that I'm noticing that we can kind of clean up here while we're here is this value. It's just returning this object, and we're not doing anything else inside of here, any computation. So we can actually just take this and get rid of that, and it has an implicit return with the arrow function, and this should function exactly the same way. I would love if this stayed on one line, or broken down into another line, but Prettier. Oh, nice. Sometimes you can trick Prettier with that, because I feel like this is just a little bit easier to read. Okay, let's see if this is actually working. New site with ID. Hopefully, okay, the audio's still working great. That makes me feel a lot better. New site. So you see this new site with ID is added to the bottom. We get our toast. Nice. And we get that ID back from the object from Firebase. We're able to use that so that when we actually deploy this to prod, we won't run into any of those issues where that value is undefined. So that's great. I'm pretty happy with that. That squashed a few little low-hanging fruit bugs that I felt like needed to be solved. The next part of this stream, and really the large part of the stream, is preparing for the future of this application with logging and testing. The first thing we're going to talk about is Checkly, which is a service that we can use to run integration tests. And what I want to set up is just a really basic browser test that's going to run on every PR. Just check and make sure that my site is alive. And if it's alive, then it's going to return 200 and the PR will be green. Now in the future, I'd like to make this more complex and do a full kind of login flow and make sure that everything is working as expected. But for now, I think I'm just going to do a really basic test. So a couple things that I've learned about Checkly as I've started to look into this is that under the hood, it's using Puppeteer. If you've ever done any sort of integration testing or automated testing, you might have heard of Puppeteer before. But basically at a high level, it allows you to control your browser in a headless fashion. So in a automated way where you yourself are not out there clicking things. Now there's quite a few different options in this space for how you want to do automated testing. There's Puppeteer, there's Cypress, there's a few others. But I found pretty good luck with either of them. And the thing that I like about Checkly is that it abstracts away setting up Puppeteer or any of this other infrastructure for you, and it allows you to just focus on writing the tests. I was following this guide that they put out for automated testing with Vercel and Checkly, and I started to look into this a little bit. They're using Gatsby in their example, but basically what I did was I started a free trial, and I think one other thing that I really like about Checkly is it has pretty reasonable pricing plans. I'm probably going to step up to this developer plan, probably on an annual basis, because I could totally go through the extra work to set up Cypress to run on my PRs or set up Puppeteer to run on my PRs and do that infrastructure. But honestly, I'm trying to offload as much of that work as I can and take advantage of some of these platforms that have a lot of really cool features. Plus, something I want to touch on that I'm hoping to get to is Checkly will also give you a public status page, which is something that I'm going to want for this software as a service, so people can see if things are up or down, and you can kind of get that out of the box. So really what I did so far was I just integrated with GitHub, and I hooked up my account here. This is my dashboard, and it gives you this super basic browser check out of the box, which is just your hello world. And that's what I have here. So I've had it running now for a few days, and luckily I've had 100% uptime. That's great. And what's really interesting is we can even see the response times over different regions. Now for this initial setup, I just picked a couple locations in the United States, but the awesome thing about Vercel's global CDN is that I can deploy this all over the world, and I'm still going to have really low response times. So it's really cool that we can check this out and monitor at a really high level. And let me just talk about kind of what this check is doing. We are setting up Puppeteer. We're launching a new page, and we're going to navigate to fast feedback. All we're going to do is grab the title of the page and ensure that it equals fast feedback. So really basic uptime check, and then it closes down the browser. Some other cool things that we can do in here that I like. Not only can you see your test results, but you can also take screenshots. And I think screenshots are going to be really, really helpful as I start to do more complex tests here, because I want to take a screenshot at each way along the process so I can understand if something is failing. So I just ran this really quick. It passed, which is awesome. The next piece that I was pausing on this because I didn't want to go too far was I want to set this to run on PR, and I'm hoping that's in this example somewhere. One other really thing that was cool here is this Puppeteer Recorder, which is a Chrome extension that you can use. So basically I would just go out to my site, I would click login, I would click, add a site, I would leave some feedback, and it basically captures all of that and then gives you the script. So you don't even have to do any of the coding yourself. You can just use the extension, click around, and then it will spit out the script. And that's something I want to try for the more complex test. So I have this check. I think this is where I need to pick up now. So on our check, edit check CI/CD tab and link GitHub repo. I'm clicking. There we go. Run checks as part of your CI/CD pipeline. Yes. I want to integrate with GitHub. At least for right now, I think I'll just do it on all repositories for now, but I might scope this down. Because if this works really well, I might like to add it to my own website too. Whoa, there's a little lag here. Come on. There we go. Okay, so that connected my Checkly account with GitHub. That looks good. Ooh, I could also go with Prometheus. That would be neat. Okay. Now that it's... I need to link GitHub repo and select the repository. Where's that at? Oh, okay. It said to only pick one repository, so I'm wondering if I just screwed that up because I didn't pick all of them. Let's see. We'll go back to this event. Oh, not that one. This is the one that these two Checkly gives you by default. We might as well just delete these. Let's call this health check. Oh, here's that link GitHub repo. Okay, so I had to connect my account. Okay, where are we at here? Okay, it's linked to the fast feedback GitHub repo. Includes screenshots and PR comment. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Cool. Let's test this out. So, wow, that's really hard to see. Fixes the site ID issue, and then the login redirects. Fix login redirects and use site ID. Okay, so I created a new branch, I committed my changes, I pushed those changes up to GitHub, and I'm going to go out to the fast feedback repo, fix, login redirects. Just going to quickly look over this code and make sure everything looks good. Looks good to me. All right, now we get to see all of our integrations work their magic. Vercel will automatically deploy a preview of this so I can go out and test and make sure that things work. And then hopefully Checkly will kick off and run on this PR. Vercel's going. Did I need to create a trigger? I might have. Oh, no. Okay, so it just didn't leave, it doesn't leave a comment, but it's down here inside of the checks. Okay, awesome. So let's go inspect this check. Nice. That was a lot more easy than I expected. Before we merge this in, I'm actually just gonna verify that some of these things are fixed. So let's go out here and log in. Sweet. merge away, in my opinion. Fix login redirects and use site ID. Boom. So we made pretty good progress here. Now that we have this connected and set up, the next piece, ooh, what do I need to save? I don't know what I changed, but I'm gonna save it. The next thing that I wanna check out down the road is I'm gonna try to figure out how to do kind of a full suite of logging in, going through that full flow and making sure that everything works. But I think we can skip out of this for now. Okay, we can move on to logging then. I'm gonna check out back to master, pull down that latest commit. Boom. Okay, so the logging solution that I want to check out is called Logflare. And kind of the reason for this and why I've been exploring this is if I go to Vercel.com and I go to my dashboard and I go to fast feedback. Inside of here, if we go on the latest deployment, you can view the build logs coming in, but these are the only ones that are stored. So if I wanted to see kind of live streaming logs as people viewed my website, I can go into functions and get these real-time logs. I think I have to pick. Yeah. So I went to the site and I see this real-time log come in. That was a request to get the sites for my user, right? And this is really helpful, but there's a couple drawbacks to this. The logs are never stored, so you can only view them as they stream in. You can't really search these or query them in any kind of structured way, and there isn't really a good way to go back in the past and look at things. Plus, you know, if things break, I'm going to want to set up some kind of alerting for this. So to do that, Vercel has this concept of log drains, and basically all of these logs that filter in, not only for your build logs, your static file logs, and your Lambda function logs, all of those things can then be sent out to a log drain and sent over to some third party. So Logflare seems really promising. It has pretty good integration with Vercel, which I like, and it has a really great free tier. So I want to explore using this. One thing that's really interesting as I've looked into Logflare is that in the back end, it's using BigQuery. And what I like about that is that rather than using maybe like a AWS storage bucket, it's going to be a lot cheaper for them to save off these logs and then subsequently query them as well. So in the long run, that's going to save us money if we want to move up from the free tier to maybe the next tier, which I really like. Plus, you're not locked into anything. It's just BigQuery. So if you want, you could just export all your data and move off and do it yourself if you wanted. But what's really cool is that they provide some really nice features on top of Vercel that you don't have to build yourself. And in this, so Vercel has an integrations marketplace that you can kind of find some things and hook into. And for logging, there's a few different options. I've decided to check out Logflare, but you could check out really any of these. And one of the really cool things about this too that I'm excited to try is it will show you exactly how long your Lambda functions ran for and then how much you were billed on that duration. So if you ever jump up off of the free tier for Vercel and you want to do something where you're trying to see how long you're being billed for, that would be super helpful. And you don't have to do that at all. It just comes out of the box using Logflare. So I'm really excited about that. Their querying also seems really nice. And I found they have a pretty good example that I kind of want to try to follow. But the first thing I need to do Looks like there's an integration guide. The first thing I need to do is add this. Well, I probably need to make an account on Logflare too. Just sign up with GitHub. Your app dot source name. Fast feedback. Sources are where logs go. You can name your source anything you want. Fastfeedback.Vercel. You need this source ID for some of your integrations. Okay. Oh, it was already here. Okay, add Logflare. Okay, authorize the integration. Okay, we've successfully authenticated with Logflare. Log drains, no log drains found. So we want to create a log drain. Let's do fast feedback. The Logflare source. So that, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So that's the new source inside of Logflare that we created. And this is where we're going to dump all of our logs to. Okay, so sending logs over to there. Seems pretty good. Okay, source created, no logs. Oh. Okay, so it's been initialized. Let's try doing some things. Does logging work? Oh, no. I just realized there's another bug that we'll have to fix with this. This is really interesting and a good catch. So even though I know the ID, when I was running this locally, it was running the static site generation methods, get static props, get static paths, and it was able to fetch the data for this site. But because I don't have this set up to have a fallback when I am deployed, it's going to 404. So what I want to do is I'm going to have to set up a fallback so that it renders into a loading state that first time, and then it's statically generated here on out after that. So that's really interesting. Maybe I'll get some good 404s in here. I do. Awesome. So let's just look through here and see what we're working with. We have static logs that are giving 200s, and I can kind of check out the metadata of what we're working with. Gives me all the information from the Vercel CDN. And then going further, I have lambdas. So I have a 200 to API sites. And like I talked about, we can see the duration that it ran and then even how much we were billed for. So it took 158 milliseconds. Really a lot of good information in here that I might need when trying to debug things. I'm guessing that, yeah. And then even here's these 404s for where that page doesn't exist. So I even get to see which path was I trying to go to that was screwing up and giving me a 404. I think this can be super helpful. Let's try searching. So this will group by the minute, and it just has all of the logs coming in. So most of them were, this is like live streaming it basically. Almost all 200s with some 400's in there. That's looking good. Okay, where is... I wonder if I can just search for this API sites directly. Nice, okay, that kind of works as I would have expected. So now I should be able to take this and maybe I want to see the billing duration over time or see how long it takes to run over time. What I think is really interesting about Logflare is that it parses your logs even if you send over like really dynamic data, and it figures out the schema for you. So I think somewhere in here, yeah, these are all the fields that it parsed. So maybe I want to look at, we'll just say this duration that it ran at. Copy that to the clipboard, close this, and I think I would want to do like the average. I'm kind of just winging it here. Average is 178, 94. That's really interesting. I wonder if there is the ability to kind of see all of the fields that we have available here. Ah, UTC conversion. Huh, that's really cool. The next thing I kind of wanted to look at with this that I think is super interesting is, like, obviously this is helpful to know when we're getting 200s, 400s, 500s, but what we really want is, now that we have this configured, I think, let me just rename this. What I'm very curious inside of this is this Pinot Logflare. So from what I understand, Pinot is essentially a module that allows us to kind of easily send and log structured data. It's just a wrapper that allows you to do like a logger.info or a logger.error, and then this allows us to build on top of that. And with one configuration, we can do logs from the server or the client side. So if it's on the server side, it's going to use this Pinot logger and send those errors over that come from the log stream, or the log drain, sorry. And if it's on the client side, it just sends a post request and sends those logs over. So I think I want to do something like this. The combination of this along with this example should get me rolling. I feel like this is the reality most of the time when I'm building applications. It's finding examples, reading tutorials, kind of trying to dive down into the code and understand what is going on so that I can build off it and have, you know, really a good understanding for myself, because that's the best way that I learn. specifically what I'm looking for here, right, is if I'm in like this sites API and we catch any kind of error when we're trying to verify the ID token or get the user sites querying Firebase, I want to know about that, and I want to get that value and log out a little bit more information. So we're going to need basically this and this. Oop. Put this under utils, logger, I don't understand why this is in here, because I don't see it being used anywhere, so I'm not going to do that, and we'll see if that bites me. So I'm going to need to add Pinot and Pinot Logflare, API key and source token. Probably going to need to grab those out of the dashboard. Base level debug, sure. Environment variable, GitHub commit. That seems helpful. Get a little prettier auto formatting. I'm going to turn off my notifications so they don't ding. Okay, that looks good. Oh, yarn add. That'll do it. Let's go into our settings. See if I can find out where the API, ingest API key, and then the source token. Where does that come from? Now I'm gonna have to change this after the stream. Oh, interesting. That popped up an email. I don't want to do that. Source token, and then this must be the source at the end. Must just be this. Okay, source. Set the source at where the logs are sent. That makes sense to me. Okay, we got those installed. I'm going to run that. There was also this util, which I believe the intention here. Yeah, I believe the intention with this util is that BigQuery only accepts certain type of headers in a certain format. So like we can't have hyphens, they have to be underscores, and this is basically just formatting those keys. So I think I'm going to include this too. I don't really like prep. We'll say format, object keys. Okay, so we have format object keys and we have logger. You know, a lot of people are really picky about default exports or named exports, and I'm really not that picky. I think in general, as long as you're consistent with it, that's really what matters. And I try to use default exports for like a lot of my React components, and then for utilities, it's kind of nice to do named exports. Okay. We'll see if we get our autocomplete. No? Okay. Logger. Format, object keys. So given the headers for this request, basically format them so they're in an acceptable state. Don't need to pull that out to be its own variable. We can just put that directly in here. That looks pretty good to me. API request. I feel like here in API sites. And then I wonder if I should spread out the contents of this error or just include it as part of the response here. Because like we're passing in this object and then obviously some name for that error. I wonder if there's any helpful information on what we want to do here. I know that there was a guide somewhere. Let's give it a shot and see. We could try to do something without verifying the ID token, and that should log an error. So I'll go to my local host. I'll go to 3000. Make sure this is working as I expect. I would also expect that this logger would log out to just the standard out in the node context. We shall see. Okay. So if I try to go directly to API sites, this should fail because I'm not passing in the proper header, so it can't get the ID token. Okay. So in this error, right, we have this object, we have a message, and environment is not set. I'm guessing that's because we're running locally. But this looks good. Level error, message error here. This has me questioning. Obviously it's an error because it's a logger error, so that probably doesn't do me any good. This probably doesn't do me any good either. Maybe it's just error.message. That would make the most sense to me. And I also wonder if I'm going to be doing this exact same thing in multiple places and basically just passing in the error message and then doing some log error to the server, then I can probably abstract this out into a method too inside of that logger file so that I don't have to kind of copy paste that around. Because I know we're catching errors in a few different places. At the database level, when we're getting all the feedback for the sites, the feedback API route, whoops, the feedback API route and then the sites API route. I can't, at least for right now, I can't think of a good reason when I would want to customize this more than just knowing the error message and the associated fields. So I think I might move this out into a helper. We'll see. I'm gonna give it a shot. We'll try this out, see how it feels. If I'm not liking it, I'll move it into kind of a shared utility. Really love these absolute imports and aliases though. It really cleans up this whole import electric boogaloo madness. Okay. So we have logs flowing in for not only static files, build logs, which we're going to be able to see here very soon, and then Lambda. I think we're ready now to push this up and try it out. These probably shouldn't be hard-coded though. So I'm gonna have to switch this out. And this is going to be let's see. I'm just trying to debate if I need to put the next public prefix on this, because if I'm going to use this same log source to log things on the browser side, we're going to need that next public prefix so that it gets exposed on the client side. If it's only in the context of Node.js, then we can just name it whatever. Let's do that. Next public Logflare key. And class6.env. So what I'm realizing now is that I've already went and updated all of my keys. So I really don't want to have to do that again on stream. So I'm going to do that outside of the stream to actually pop these in. Or maybe I'm going to have to switch this out anyway. So maybe I just try this out. Now that it's written, it'll have to be switched out anyway, so I might as well just push this up and try it out. By the way, the Command B toggles that side panel, which is really helpful, especially when I have the super increased font here. Okay, add Pinot logging and handle exceptions and API routes. Say add logging. Okay, that looks good. This was very helpful. Whoops. We'll go back to here, add logging. Quickly look over this and make sure that everything looks good. Now, if I go back to the log stream, wow, that's awesome. I'm really pumped that we're also getting the build logs coming in too. So not only are we getting requests from people visiting the site, the static files, the Lambda. Oh man. That's awesome. I could probably even create an alert if the bundle size went over a certain value. Another thing that's really interesting that I'm considering trying out would be inside of Next.js 9.4, I believe, there was this Web Vitals reporting. So Google puts out these values that are really, really helpful in measuring the performance of your site. So first contentful paint, largest contentful paint, input delay, and layout shift. And Next.js made this really easy to have reporting on these values. So at the app.js level, you can export a function that's going to emit what those metrics are every time that they get reported. So you could send this over to analytics, some kind of tracker. I've done a proof of concept with this with quick metrics, and I think this would also be perfect for Logflare so that I could have that information saved over time and easily query that on a graph and kind of see the trends. Because you can also take this data and turn it into a Google Data Studio graph, which is basically like Google's BI tool on top of BigQuery. Okay, I can see my new deployment with Vercel. I have the 2 routes that have changed. My checkly test passed. I'm gonna get really used to that. That's super nice. And I have my build logs. Let's go to here and log in. Okay, so I see it's really easy to differentiate 2 here because of this immutable URL that Vercel gives us, specifically where these logs are coming from. These logs are just flowing in. I probably want to look for I think what I want to do to make sure that that's working is to go here and try to do what I did locally, which is access that API sites. And yeah, that should blow up. And I should see this then stream in. I see, okay, 500 API sites. Let's see. Okay, that's definitely what I've expected for the message. Environment not sent. I feel like I think this might be node env. Level error, that looks good. Our headers. Nice. Now what I would like to see is then being able to maybe go in here, look at the schema, and I know now, what was it, the status code? I might want to take and look at the status code is, I wonder if it works like this. That is not how this works. But I want to figure out a way to then maybe query by only these 500s. And then I could create an alert for that. I think that would be really helpful. But I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on Logflare to understand exactly how to run those queries and then set up some alerting. But I'm pretty happy with how far we've got. We have squashed a few bugs, fixed some of the login and logout issues that we were seeing, got Checkly set up so that it will run integration test on our PR, which is great. I think going forward, that's going to add a lot more confidence in my deployments, especially as I make that a more comprehensive test that covers the entirety of logging in, adding feedback, adding sites, and then deleting things and cleaning it up. And then, yeah, Logflare was super awesome, easy to set up. It allows me to now save these logs so that if people are hitting 500s, I'm going to know about it, and I'm going to have the ability to kind of follow up on this. So with that, I think that concludes this stream. I'm pretty happy with what we've covered so far. So for those of you who are tuning in, thank you, and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks.